Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Within Zionism. This is the third episode that we're recording this week, so this is getting interesting saying this over and over again.
Yeah, usually we will just do one a week and then post it. But because we're going to Mechina, we want to have some extra podcasts ready in case we can't record. So this is all for you guys.
Yeah, so obviously with your hosts Ozzy Fine and Moshe Schwartzberg, today we have another special guest, Joshua Halickman, also known as the Sports Rabbi.
What's going on, guys?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
We spoke earlier, and you have some interesting things to say, so let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Fire away.
Okay, so let's start off. Just tell us about yourself.
Sports Rabbi Josh Halickman, born and bred in Montreal, came to Israel as a yeshiva student back in 1991-92. Went to BMT, a school that does not exist anymore, but the campus still exists, the YU campus. Met my future wife, Sharona Margolin Halickman. Went to Yeshiva University, got married in 1995, lived in New York from 95 to '04 with two boys, made Aliyah in '04. Big sports fan. While I lived in New York, I had season tickets for the Jets, the Rangers, the Yankees, the Knicks, the Liberty, the City Hawks, if anybody knows who those are, the Metro Stars, the St. John's basketball. Big sports fan, an accountant by trade. Always wanted to delve into the world of sports. Made Aliyah in 2004 with two boys. We now have three boys. And thankfully, 16 years later, the Sports Rabbi is as strong as ever. SportsRabbi.com, at the Sports Rabbi on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We talk about the love of Zionism through sports, the love of sports, Israeli sports, have a weekly newsletter that goes out to thousands of people around the world. Lots of good stuff, fun stuff too. And it's just a matter of taking, what I loved, which were sports and Israel, and combining it into one. Exactly what I did when I got here. Made Aliyah in 2004. 2005, 2006, just went for it. A nickname Sports Rabbi came from Rabbi Avi Weiss of the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale back around year 2000 or so. We can get into that story if you want. But just basically took that, took the title and ran with it with this great website, which I've had for over a decade. And give you an example, just this past year, I was at close to 150 sporting events across about 6 different countries, I believe, which is pretty amazing. Lots of fun, lots of stuff to do, and lots of good words about Zionism to put out there through Israeli sports.
Wow, that was good and to the point.
Yeah.
We will, as all of our other interview episodes, be leaving all of the links for Twitter and everything in the YouTube description on our website and everywhere where you find podcasts, so go check those out. So let's just do the same question that we do with every one of our guests. We like to put them on the spot. Our listeners already know what this is. How would you define Zionism?
How would I define Zionism? The love of Israel. Loving Israel, loving the land of Israel, loving the people of Israel, loving the state of Israel, loving the land of Israel, the land of milk and honey, living, breathing, doesn't matter where you are at any of the four corners of the world. Just the thought that there is this great, amazing country called Israel. The first thing I always think of is blue and white, just because of the flag. And, that's what Zionism is to me. And trying to promote the land of Israel to those who don't yet know the greatness of this country.
It's interesting that you say that because a lot of people, most people, I think, would say that Zionism is supporting the land of Israel. Not many people say loving Israel. I never actually noticed that until you just said it, but I don't think anybody's actually ever answered that, like, Zionism is the love for Israel.
Yeah,
Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right. We've got a lot of technical, it's supporting, it's a lot more of technical
Most
things,
people
but
just give, like, the Wikipedia definition.
yeah.
Well, you're not going to get that from the sports rabbi.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's amazing. That was, like, now the question is supporting and loving the same thing when it comes to Zionism?
Yeah, I mean, you can support Israel through financial means, but you can also support just by having is the land of Israel in your heart and your mind, and loving the land of Israel, because that's what It's what God wants. He wants you to love Eretz Israel. I'm looking out right now from my balcony, and I'm literally steps from the old city of Jerusalem, steps from Rabbi, steps from the Temple Mount. I see beautiful trees, greenery, gorgeous blue sky. Doesn't get any better than this. You know, every morning when I wake up, when I walk outside, I thank God for allowing me the privilege to be living in this country where I can fulfill the mitzvah of Yeshuv Eretz Israel, the mitzvah of living in the land of Israel. It is a privilege. It's a privilege that really, if you're Jewish around the world, you can take full advantage of anytime you want.
Yeah, sadly, I do not live in Jerusalem, right next to Harvard. That would be awesome. But I do actually have two Israeli flags hung up in my room for two different occasions. The first one that is hung up, the first thing I see in the morning, right next to my bed, is the one from our Poland trip. When towards the last
Nice.
2 or 3 days, they gave me a flag, and they just said I could keep it. So I hang that, and the other one, which is actually right next to me over here, right off camera, is the one that I got from the following year at Yom Yerushalayim. So those are just two like Israeli flags that I keep with me in my room at all times.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, so I don't have any of those in my room, but I have my background on Zoom. I got our logo over
We
here
see
that's got the blue and
that,
white, got the
yeah.
hotel over here.
I have numerous flags in my room, in my bedroom. We have this great picture of two people, you know, the typical guy in the Kova temple, and this blonde girl. So it's like Josh and Sharona, and you know, they're handing the hearts, and there's this beautiful, you know, flag of Israel in the background. It's
How
a pretty nice
romantic.
picture. And on the other side, we have this great collage of our family that is in the shape of the Israeli flag.
That's cool.
Ooh, you gotta send me a picture of that.
I will. That was a birthday present from the family this past year.
That's
Happy
cool.
birthday. Okay, now let's get into sports.
Well, that's not something I ever thought we'd say on this podcast.
I know, right? Okay, so first of all, I want to ask you, how do you have time for all these sporting events? Just a
You have
quick
to
answer.
have
I
a.
just want like
It's a very simple answer. You have to have a good wife. It's just a matter of carving out the time, and you know, if it's something that you're very passionate about, you always make time for that, and that's where my passion is, along with my three boys.
that's cool. Wow,
If you ever
lucky
have
you.
spare tickets, me and Ozzy would love something.
This is true.
You
Okay.
know, the other catch is that the three boys are in the family business. The
Uh,
post army guy is just got engaged, and he is our photographer.
Mazalto.
Mazel tov.
So he's been doing professional photography since the age of 14. He's been around the world with me. He's been on basketball courts in Russia, to soccer fields in Basel, Switzerland, taking pictures across the United States and Canada, and many other different countries, from Romania to I can't even remember all the Croatia. And there's just so many to list. It's quite amazing how many places he's been with me. 16-year-old runs the Hebrew side of the Sports Rabbi website, which is a little different view than the Zionistic English side. It's more of a serious, competitive view for the other sports websites in this country. Very analytical. Happens to be an amazing writer, excellent Hebrew literature person. Can write much better than I can, that is for sure. And my 13-year-old is the social media hack. He runs my Instagram account because I'm not very good at Instagram. So he handles the Instagram. I personally deal with the Facebook and and Twitter accounts, and we go from there. But he does all kinds of cool edits and cool photos and lots of different cool things on Instagram. But he's the man that does that.
Gen
That's cool.
Z.
It's funny that you mentioned that the Hebrew side of the website is less of like Zionist things and more just, competitive and sports. Because we've actually mentioned on the podcast that Israelis are not as Zionist as Anglos. It's
Well,
interesting.
they're Zionists in their own right, but it's a different passion. Remember,
It's a
you know,
different mentality.
Israeli, but it's also Israelis that live in the land of Israel don't necessarily need to have that passion because they are here. They
Well,
live, they
that's
live in,
debatable.
they well. They live it. No matter what you can say, right, left, they are still fulfilling the mitzvot of Yeshuv Eretz Israel.
100%. Yeah.
I think it's also a
They're
generational
fulfilling the
thing.
mitzvah,
So
settling the land of Israel.
I think it's also a generational thing. People our age just take it for granted that, oh, we live in Israel. I can go to the Kotel. I can go to any part of Israel almost completely. While maybe my grandparents or people around that age may not or have not had Israel the way we have it today their entire lifetime. So they probably have a different view of Israel than we do.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, if you look at like anyone our age, Moshe, like they're not going to be as like, activists and advocating for Israel if they live here. Most of them were born here. If you look at our high school teacher, Rabbi, shout out, he is like seriously a Zionist. He's, I think, the most Israeli Zionist I know.
Yeah.
The guy loves Israel and he doesn't stop talking about it.
But at the end of the day, when the COVID crisis was going on, you saw how many Israelis that were living in the United States started packing up their bags and coming back
Yes.
to Israel also. So there's a lot to be said about this great country. Believe me, as much as people may want to rank on it, the natives of the country, they still know where their bread is buttered and where the safest place in the world is for Jews,
Yeah. Deep
Yeah.
down, we know Israel's the place to be when we need to be.
for sure. That's why we're here.
Okay, now to sports. So, how do you how do you bring sports into Israel? Like, what's your connection there? How do you connect the two?
That's a great question. How do you connect the two? And I always have to, I get that question a lot, and they look at me, what does Israel have to do with sports? If it's a tour company looking at me and they said, like, why should we hire you to speak to our teenagers that are coming into the country? And, they can go to Masada, they can go to the Dead Sea, they can go to the Old City, they can go to the Baha'i Gardens. Like, those are cool, different things. They have something to do with the land of Israel. But like sports, like, what does it have to do? Well, the truth is, it has everything to do with the land of Israel. And the bottom line is that sports in this country really started outside of this country in the late 1890s. In the late 1890s, you have at the same time going on as the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland, with, of course, our good friend Theodor Herzl. The same time that is going on, you have the Jews in the city of Constantinople who were thrown out of their sports clubs. Now, why were they thrown out of their sports clubs? Because they were Jewish, anti-Semitism. They said, the people of Constantinople said, we don't want to have Jews allowed here anymore. And we've seen that, across the United States, there were many golf clubs that wouldn't allow African Americans. They don't allow Jews. I mean, now, of course, that's changed, but in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even, that was still it's just still a reality. So you have these Jews that were basically, in essence, looking to play sports, looking to exercise, and they had to form their own sports club. So how did they form their own sports club? They did it, and they called it. What did they call it? They called it Maccabi. Why did they call it Maccabi, guys? Why would you think they'd want to call a sports club Maccabi? I'm
I
going to
I got
turn the
no
tables
answer.
to you.
Maccabi,
Well,
I've
Yehuda
always
Maccabi,
wondered like why are all the sports teams like Maccabi Tel Aviv, Maccabi,
Yehuda
all,
Maccabi,
all
I
the
guess.
Maccabi.
so I'm going to tell you the answer right here. There's a number of reasons they chose it. Number one, because of the holiday of Hanukkah, which the Maccabees were, of course, the main stars of the show. Saving the Second Temple at the time that the Greeks put in the idols, and they came in and busted that up, and of course they found the oil that lasted for 8 days to clean up the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, and that was one reason. But also there was a biblical reason. What's Maccabi an acronym for, guys?
I know this. Wait, hold on. Uh, let's not drag it out. I cannot remember, but I did know this.
It's an acronym for Me Kamocha Belim Hashem. Who
Oh,
is
okay.
greater
I
than you,
knew
God? Right?
that. I knew that.
Who is greater than you, God? So they decided. Well, how do you think the Maccabees got the name? Right? They went to the
Right.
Torah and they took the pasuk from from Exodus, from the book of Exodus, after the Bnei Israel, after the Israelites left Egypt, they crossed over the Red Sea and they celebrated the song of the sea, right? Az Yashir, the song of the sea. And they said, who is greater than you, God? Of course, there's who's greater than God? No one's greater than God. So that is why that even the Maccabi has a biblical reason as to why they started the name. So they start their own clubs called Maccabi in the late 1890s. The early 1900s, they start coming down into the land of Israel. They make the first aliyah and they come to the city of Jaffa, right? Jaffa, is right on the ocean, great place. It's before Tel Aviv exists, of course, with the early 1900s, not around 1909, 1910. And they get there and they see the British, even though it was still under the Ottoman Empire, the British still had a presence, already had a presence from the late 1840s in Israel when they came to bail out the Egyptians and so forth and so on. And they were already in the land of Israel. They saw them playing soccer. So they started a club and they called it Maccabi Jaffa. That was the first sports club in the land of Israel called Maccabi Jaffa. Of course, they founded in 1906. 3-4 years later, they changed the name to Maccabi Tel Aviv. And then you have these sports clubs all over the country, right? That's why you have a Maccabi Haifa, you have a Maccabi Petach Tikva, you even had a Maccabi Jerusalem at one point, Maccabi Beersheba. You have all these Maccabi sports clubs all over the land of Israel, which is literally like a JCC. If people in the United States know what JCCs are, the Jewish Community Centers. You have a JCC Rockland County, you have a JCC Queens, you have a JCC in Cleveland. So it's the same idea. Now, underneath Maccabi Sports Club of Maccabi Tel Aviv, you have 19 different sports today. You don't just have soccer and basketball. You have volleyball, handball, swimming, track and field, all these types of different areas of sport that people are associated with Maccabi. Now, at the time that they designed the first uniforms, they decided to use the colors blue and white. So why would they use it? Guys, why would they use the color blue and white?
That's the Israeli
I
flag
can take
colors.
one guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because for the Israeli flag, even though the state of Israel didn't yet exist, the flag existed already. And they said, okay, we're going to have this flag is going to be our uniform blue and white. But today, guys, what color is Maccabi Tel Aviv? And many of your listeners probably even know it as well. Even if they live in the United States, Maccabi Tel Aviv, what color is Maccabi Tel Aviv today, guys? Even you guys know that.
Yellow and blue.
Blue and yellow, right? Yellow and blue. So
Got it.
how is that possible? We're going to find out in a minute, okay? Now,
Okay.
you said before, Ozzy, right? Hapoel, all the teams are Maccabi are Hapoel, right?
Right.
So where did Hapoel come into this? So get this story. Now, this is such a typical Israeli story. I'm going to blow your mind. Okay?
I'm putting my microphone away. This is interesting.
I'm going to blow your mind as to how it began. Maccabi, for example, the people that associated with Maccabi were people that liked business. They were business people. They're capitalists in the world. Capitalists, guys that in banking, industry, business, factories, they were working the land of Israel in that fashion. But of course, what is the biggest movement in this country? Back in the day, what was it called? And it still exists today. It starts with a K.
Bankapolim. The Bankapolim people.
K-I. Kibbutz, the kibbutz movement, right?
Right, yeah.
You have kibbutzim all over the place. Now, kibbutzim are socialist, right?
Right.
They're working the land. They're the laborers in the factories. They're not the ones that own the factories, but they're the laborers. And what happened was the people, the socialists, couldn't get along with the capitalists. So what do you have? You know the joke where they say you have 2 Jews, 3 shuls?
Mm-hmm.
Or here you had 2 Jews and they needed another. They couldn't be in the same sports clubs as the capitalists, so they broke away in 1924 and formed the Hapoel sports clubs. So that's why you now have a Maccabi Tel Aviv and a Hapoel Tel Aviv. And Hapoel sports clubs started growing throughout the country, just like Maccabi did. You have Maccabi Tel Aviv, Hapoel Tel Aviv, Maccabi Petach Tikva, Hapoel Petach Tikva, Maccabi Beersheba, Hapoel Beersheba, all with different sports. So that's the beginning of the sports in the land of Israel and how connected it is to the history of this land. Quite amazing, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, it is definitely mind-blowing.
Yeah.
How come today they didn't unite?
Because at the end of the day, the people that associated with these clubs are, just as you have right-wing and left-wing people, you have capitalists and you have socialists. Even to this day, if you look at the Hapoel clubs, it's much more of a socialist movement. Even their logo to this day is the hammer and sickle, which is definitely a very socialist symbol, whereas Maccabi is the Magen David with either a soccer ball, handball, basketball. they will never unite. I mean, that's what it's going to be. But that's why you have Maccabi and Apol, and then of course you have Beitar movement, which came after who? Who founded the Beitar movement?
I have no clue.
Well, Jabotinsky, right?
Oh, of course, obviously.
And what happened from there? The people that associated with Jabotinsky and his movement decided to have Beitar sports clubs. So that's why you have a Beitar Jerusalem. That's why you have a Beitar Tel Aviv. So it really, the sports really describe the people of Israel and who we are and the basis of the land of Israel. And usually within about 5 minutes, the people that have asked me, what does sports have to do with Israel? Well, they get it. It has everything to do with Israel, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, that was
Mind blowing.
that was cool.
Okay. That's all. Take a breath.
Yes.
Let's get back into. um, you used to work for Maccabi Tel Aviv, right?
Correct. So I
And
did.
you've interviewed players. You've been in
All the
that world,
time. All the
right? You want to talk
time.
a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's
You
pretty
mentioned
cool
the
stuff.
two players from Israel that are going to be drafting. Hopefully, you'll talk about
Yeah,
them.
yeah, we'll talk about them also.
All right, go
I
ahead.
I think that working for Maccabi Tel Aviv, and I did it for 5 years. I ran their English media presence, and I also started their charitable foundation. You know, in the United States, it's normal that sports clubs have a charitable organization, a charitable arm. Here in Israel, interestingly enough, the teams really don't have that. Where they work with segments of the population that need help, whether it's Holocaust survivors, whether it's the segments of the Ethiopian community, whether it's the Arab Israeli community, whether it's people that are just destitute. There's a lot of different things that could be done in this country that are done, say, in other countries by sports teams. And Maccabi Tel Aviv had a vision that they wanted to have a special arm of that. And they approached me because I work, my specialty is in nonprofit work. And they asked me to build a business plan. And if it would work out well, I would be the head of the foundation, which ended up happening. And I spent a number of great years traveling to Tel Aviv almost 7 days a week. Not on Shabbat, but on Friday, you could see me traveling to Tel Aviv for a program in a school with some children. Or Saturday night, I would be traveling to a game. And it was a privilege. And I think that's, working for Maccabi Tel Aviv, and this is the soccer team of Maccabi Tel Aviv, is not something to be taken for granted. It's like the New York Yankees of the country here in Israel. It's an amazing experience from working with top level people and management in an office environment, but also just being able to hang out with the players and going to the practices and having the players work with you, if it's going to schools or working with Ethiopian children or other different segments of the population that need help. It's an amazing privilege and an honor to do so. I think sometimes people don't really understand, even people that wear the yellow and blue of Maccabi Tel Aviv don't understand the privilege as to what it is. And I think that's where I want to just get into the colors I mentioned before. I think this really will give you a sense of how connected a team like Maccabi Tel Aviv is to the Jewish people as a whole. We mentioned before that the colors originally were blue and white. Well, in 1942, the top player of the time in Israel, his name was Yossel Amiramovich, who we could say was the Leo Messi of Israel. He went to management and said that they wanted to change the uniform color from white to yellow. So why would they want to change the uniform color from white to yellow, guys? 1942. What's going on in the world in 1942? What's happening to the Jewish
Wait.
people
Oh,
across
World War
Europe?
II. No. Yes, World War II, right? Or am I getting my years off? Yeah, okay. Good.
Oh, the Yellow Star.
Right, of course. There you go, Ozzy. Very good. The Yellow Star. So Yossel Amiramovich said, we want to change the white in our uniform to yellow because we want to identify, we want to be with our brothers and sisters and friends and relatives that are stuck in Poland, that are stuck in Germany, that are stuck in Austria, that are in concentration camps, that are in ghettos, that are forced to wear the yellow star. And we want to show that we are standing with them here in Israel on the soccer field. We will have to change our color from white to yellow. And that's what they did. Management said, we will do this until the conflict ends, and then we will see what will happen. After 3 years, We know that war ends in 1945. We find out that, of course, 6 million Jews perished in the Holocaust. And Maccabi Tel Aviv says we are going to keep the yellow in our uniform as an everlasting memorial to those whose dreams were snuffed out at the hands of the Nazis.
Wow.
So that is why today Maccabi Tel Aviv wears the yellow in their uniform.
That's chilling. I got chills from that.
It
Wow,
is.
that is.
I'm getting goosebumps. I do when I give this presentation. I always get goosebumps at this moment, and it blows people away.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
mean,
that's
that's
I
an
wonder how
amazing
many of the
story. So you want to
players
talk
know
about the
that.
connection?
Did they talk about that with the players?
So that was this one of the things that I did in the foundation. I held educational seminars with the players to make them understand, because amazingly, most Maccabi Tel Aviv fans have no clue why the color is yellow and blue. They have
Wow.
no idea. And I had seminars that I would do with the players, usually either on Yom HaShoah, which is Holocaust Remembrance Day, or the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. We would have a gathering with all the players where I would speak. I would bring in a Holocaust survivor, and we would educate them about the story as to why they are wearing the yellow. So anytime anybody, including myself, when I was working there and had a logo that was Maccabi Tel Aviv's star and it was yellow, I understood the gravity of what I was doing and the representation that I was making, because it wasn't just for the team, it was for all of the Jews around the world, and of course, especially in Europe, that perished during the Holocaust, whose dreams were snuffed out. So that is really super important. So putting that package together to work for a team like Maccabi Tel Aviv is one of the highest honors. One of the highest honors that anybody could have. And it was just amazing. The experience was fantastic. Getting to interview players, getting to hang out with players, is just something very special. And that was the sports rabbi. I've been doing that anyway since 2006, both in the world of soccer, basketball, and different other worlds as well, other sports here in the country also. So you mentioned before there are two players right now that are in the United States that were stars here in Israel, specifically Deni Avdia. So who is Deni Avdia? Deni Avdia is going to be a lottery pick in this year's NBA draft. He is the most talented Israeli basketball player to come out of the Holy Land, even more talented than Omer Caspi. Omer Caspi spent 10 years in the NBA, which is an amazing accomplishment. But Deni Avdia is even better than him. And Omer Caspi will be the first to admit that as well. You have Deni Avdia, who in himself has a great story. Who is he? He's the only child of Sharon and Zufar. Zufar is from Serbia, Kosovo, Serbia. For him, Sharon is his second wife. He came to Israel to play basketball in the early 1990s. He's not Jewish. He met a women's basketball player, Sharon Artzi. They got married. And they had one child, which was Deni Avdia. So, of course, according to Jewish law, according to Orthodox halacha, Deni Avdia is Jewish. And you can see that anytime that he is on or off the court, which is something super special. If it's lighting the Chanukiah before a game, during Hanukkah, they light the Chanukiah before the games, then Deni Avdia will be up there with the kippah, saying the brachas, lighting the candles. Last year, I had a chance to sit with him, and we were just schmoozing. And I know him since he was 15 years old, and right now he's a 19-year-old. And he said to me, Josh, he says, "Let me ask you something. Do you put on tefillin every day?" He says, "Do you on in English the phylacteries? If I don't know who the audience is, but do you put on tefillin? Do you wear?" I said, "Yeah, I do. Every morning. I've only missed putting on tefillin one morning, and since my bar mitzvah." Which was the day I had to take my wife to the hospital to give birth to our firstborn son. So hopefully God forgave me about that. And I said to him, "Yeah," I said, "I do that." He says, "Yeah, I'm thinking about starting to do that." You're talking about a special person, mature, a leader, a thoughtful person who was raised so well by his parents. Zufar Avdia is a phenomenal person on a personal level. I can say that he has been terrific to my children. It's not every day that the father of a future NBA star who is going to make millions and be successful and be plastered all over the place would, take the time to just talk to my children. He used to hang out with my children after the games because they were always waiting for me when I was doing post-game interviews. He always made sure to take them inside the arena so they wouldn't be left out alone by themselves. It's a special, special person. It's a special family. And to me, Zufer Avdia is the epitome of what Zionism is. Here he came to, try to make a living in Israel playing basketball, and literally speaks fluent Hebrew. And he is, the father of who's somebody who's going to be a great star in the NBA. The other player, his name is Yam Madar. Yam Madar is also an up-and-coming basketball player. He's in the United States right now. Hopefully he'll be picked in the second round of the draft. Great kid, great attitude. These are the future ambassadors for the state of Israel. Denny Avdia was drafted into the army on April 1st. So people thought it was an April Fool's joke, but in reality it wasn't. He was drafted on April 1st to the IDF, and his service, he had to do basic training, and he did that during the whole coronavirus break. There was a break in the basketball season. And he will do the rest of his service in North America, representing the state of Israel with whoever and whatever and whichever team he plays for in the community and around North America, because he will be now the star of the Jewish people. If he gets drafted by a team in Charlotte Hornets draft him. Anytime he'll visit the city of Sacramento, all the Jewish people and the lovers of Israel will make sure to get tickets to go to the game and wave the Israeli flag that you see. The same thing that happened with Omri Caspi. When Caspi visited Toronto, the Israelis, that was the game for the Israelis. They flocked into the ACC Center. They put up the Israeli flags. If it was in Miami, then certainly it was loaded with Jews and loaded with Israelis. But that is the best thing that the people and players like Denny Avdia can do for the state of Israel. And that to me is just an extension of Zionism, about what kind of good publicity he will be able to do. And I was just talking to his agent yesterday, and I said to him, I said, Matan, I said, what you are doing, you and Denny are doing for the Jewish people is of the highest honor. And the greatest thing that you can do for the Jewish people. And I said, I, on a personal level, am so proud to know you and to be with you and to be a part of you and to then see this journey continue now in North America.
Wow, that's an amazing, amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, we're running on 3 minutes and 20 seconds before Zoom shuts us out.
But wow, that was just amazing. But you can find all of our links that we spoke about before in the description, wherever you find our podcast and our website. You can listen to us on our website, wzionism.com, and Spotify and everywhere else you find podcasts. Leave a share, a review, or reply. Just let us know what you think in the comments. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Follow the Sports Rabbi and all those platforms also. If you're a sponsor, please contact us through our website. And this was an amazing interview. It was amazing talking to you. It was just mind-blowing what you taught us here. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, guys. Check it out, sportsrabbi.com, at the Sports Rabbi, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It was amazing, amazing, amazing stories. Like, I am mind blown. Wow. Just wow.
Next time we'll have to talk a little hockey, though.
Oh, yeah, 100%. We're definitely having you on again. Some Israel hockey. All right. Thank you. Have a great day.